بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب زدني علما.
Now let's try to see some of the individual contents what we are going to cover in the VPN module or the VPN paper here. Again, in the CCNP security, we have a dedicated paper called SVPN with a code of 300-730. So this paper focuses majorly on the VPN concepts, the virtual private network. Now again, what is virtual private network? We'll talk about that. But basically what we are trying to do is, let's say we have two sites and I want these two sites to connect remotely. Maybe you want to connect a site-to-site VPN. We call this as a site-to-site. Or maybe you have a user sitting in your home. Or maybe I'm sitting in my home and I'm trying to access the resources in my company network. And that is over some public network like internet or any other transport network. So that's what VPN. So all the technologies like your MPLS or the VPNs like DMVPN, they all come into the VPN category. Even the frame delay, there are concepts on VPN. We'll cover that. So probably in this VPN paper, we'll be starting with some basic cryptographic concepts. We'll try to understand some of the cryptographic concepts like what is encryption, because basically we need to understand what exactly encryption is, what exactly the hashing, some basic overview on how it works. Apart from that, we'll also try to understand what is the pre-shared key authentication method and the authentication method using a public infrastructure, those kind of concepts. Because once we implement the VPN, once we set up the tunnels, or once we start setting up the VPNs, we need to make sure that this traffic is secure. So in order to provide some kind of security, we must use some protocols like IPsec. We'll be using, in the case of site-to-site, inside the IPsec, again, we have an IPv1 version 1 and version 2. So we'll try to build the foundations on the version 1, and then we'll also see the version 2, which is a more secure and a more better option what is available. And then we'll also use something called SSL VPN, the SSL protocol or the TLS protocol for securing on the remote VPNs. We'll be using some remote VPN concepts where we'll be using some SSL. Of course, you can also use the remote VPN with SSL or IKE. You can either use any one, or IPsec, you can say. So you can use any one of this. So probably it's more about the VPN concepts, and this VPN can be categorized into two. Site-to-site VPNs. Again, in site-to-site, we'll be covering some basic site-to-site VPNs. And also we'll get into some advanced VPNs like DMVPN and the FlexVPN, these kind of things. Now, most of these configurations we'll be doing on the routers as well as on the ASA firewalls. Of course, we also cover up something like not only ASA, we'll also try to cover up few of the VPN configurations on our FTD device, the firepower device. Now, this FTD is again the next generation firewall. We'll talk about that in that particular module, the FTD. So this is your VPN concept, and not only that, we'll also implement on the routers, Cisco routers, because there are few VPNs which only works on Cisco routers. Like if you are implementing some site-to-site VPNs or point-to-multipoint VPNs like DMVPN or the FlexVPN. So those kind of VPNs, they work only with the Cisco routers or a specific dedicated routers, because it provides a multi-point connections where you can connect hundreds of sites. So while you are doing that, the firewalls are not designed for that. So that's the reason you will be connecting with routers. But again, most of your remote VPNs or most of your site-to-site VPNs, you generally go ahead and configure on the firewalls as well. So the overall, this paper is going to focus more on implementing your VPN options. So if you quickly go through with the specific content, like I just walk through with the list of contents where you can find the CCNP security with VPN paper. Again, there you will find specific subtopics here. Basically, these are the topics what we are going to see here. We'll start with certifications we already know, and then we'll talk about the cryptography concepts like what is cryptography, and then encryption, hashing, and the difference between the symmetric and asymmetric encryption, what is public infrastructure, these kind of concepts. So more of the theoretical terms, because we are not going to create any algorithm here. We are just trying to understand some basic concept on how these algorithms are, what exactly they are, and what exactly they do, and some basic functionality, how they work. And then we'll get into the basic VPN concepts, where we'll jump into the VPN, exactly what is VPN and the different types of VPNs, and then set up some basic configurations for that. And now all the VPNs, you must apply security, because without securing your traffic, even if you implement a VPN, then that's not really good. So we'll be using IPsec for that, and we'll see what is exactly IPsec, and then we'll see some basic side-to-side VPN labs with IPsec to understand the IPsec configurations. And then we'll jump into some theoretical concepts like understanding the different phases of the IPsec. And then we'll jump into the high-end VPNs, like multi-point VPNs. That's where the DMVPN comes into picture, dynamic multi-point VPN. So which provides hundreds of sites can be connected with a simple configurations. And that then there are different phases of the configurations, or different phases means different evolutions of the DMVPN. That's what we'll talk about, the DMVPN phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So in today's network, we'll be implementing the phase 3. Of course, the phase 3 is something we practically implement. But again, we also need to understand the phase 1 and the phase 2, where we'll try to see the differences as well. And on the top of the DMVPN, because the DMVPN natively doesn't support security, because DMVPN just provide you point to multi-point connections, where you can connect hundreds of sites simple way. But at the same time, there is no security applied. So in order to apply the security, we'll be implementing the IPsec on the top of the DMVPN. So you still see DMVPN is something used, but again, most of the DMVPNs will be replaced with FlexVPN later on. So again, the FlexVPN is an advanced version of DMVPN, we can say, and that uses IPv2. Again, IPsec uses IKE protocol generally, and there are different versions. So basically, we still use version 1, but when you talk about version 2, there are some changes in the version 2, which makes a more stable and a more secure IKE version of the IPsec protocols. So there are a few changes in that. So we'll try to understand the IPv2 foundations. So slowly you don't see IPv1 later on, but as of now, you need to know both, because you might be implementing IPv1, and you may want to implement IPv2 as well in the later on. So you'll understand the IPv2 foundations, and then you'll implement some basic labs with IPv2 with a simple labs. And then you jump into the FlexVPN. Now the FlexVPN is a kind of umbrella where you combine all the VPN hierarchy configurations into one. So because nowadays we can have some sites connecting to site-to-site VPN, and few sites are configured to access remote VPN, and there are few sites which are connecting point to multi-point VPN. So normally before FlexVPN, we used to have a separate configuration hierarchy for each type. So now Cisco, what it did, Cisco introduced a FlexVPN which uses IPv2, and then he actually combined all the commands under one single hierarchy. It's more like under the same command hierarchy, you can configure multiple different types of VPNs. So before FlexVPN, we used to have a separate configuration hierarchy for each type of VPN. So that's what we'll see, FlexVPN and those things. So this again comes under the point-to-point or point-to-multi-point connections, a complete LAN-to-LAN VPNs. Again, there are plenty of configurations we'll see on that. And finally, we'll be getting into remote VPN. Now, remote VPN is more about connecting remotely. means you will be, maybe I'm sitting in my home here and I want to access my company network. This is my company network. So what you can do is you can connect over the internet to your company network remotely. That's something you can, that is what remote VPN. So once I connect remotely, now I should be able to access the resources of my company network as if I'm sitting in my LAN or sitting in my office securely. Okay, so to do that, you can either use IPsec. So there are multiple options. You can still implement using IPsec, or you can also use SSL VPN. SSL is something more kind of light and more commonly used VPN for remote, but you can also do it with IPsec. Again, in IPsec, you can also use IQ1 and IQ2. These are the different encryption of the secure mechanisms. So in this remote VPN section, we'll try to first understand what is exactly SSL, how exactly works, and what are the different modes. And then we'll get into the configuration of the remote VPNs on the ASA, where again, in that remote VPN, again, we have three categories. We have a clientless VPN, we have a port forwarding feature of the smart tunnels, and also we have a full client VPN. We call it as AnyConnect VPN. So roughly the VPN paper is completely focused on your VPN concepts, which do cover the VPNs, not again MPLS, because MPLS concept is a little bit different, because that is a kind of VPN used inside the service providers or provided by the service providers. But this is a place where we are trying to connect our own sites, and we are trying to secure the traffic as it moves over the internet or any other public transport or any other service provider network.